Hi, guys. It's me again. Please, can we come closer? It's the same every week, just closer. Look at all this space. Look at all the. Come on, Katrina, so close. Thank you. Feel free to come closer. Buttas, come sit closer. Mano, yeah, closer, closer. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. So I usually like when I'm. Or Buttas, yeah. Yeah, don't do, like, we always trying to tell them like.
Hi, everyone. All right. So, for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and get started. Uh, I think for the sake of time. Okay. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Mark Henry. Today's talk is gonna be focused on a book. The book, it's called The Anxious Generation. So, I have a picture of it right here. Yes. I'm sorry? She can? Oh, okay. Evelyn. You're going to translate for me? Okay, that would be great. So the book is called Anxious Generation. It's a focus on the generation that grew up and went through puberty with the dawn of the smartphone. So يعني لما the smartphone was introduced and social media, Instagram, Facebook, the generation that went through puberty, development, when these things were introduced, this is a book about them. And so it's a study about what happened to them, their mental development, because of this new technology. So the focus is going to essentially be on social media, on the smartphone, طبعا كلنا we know what that is, and how it has affected our children. And I think it's because it's a very important topic. These aren't our children, these are God's children. And we obviously all have a responsibility for our children, that goes without saying. And because they are God's, I think we need to be knowledgeable of what's out there and have a really good grasp of what our kids are being exposed to and what is potentially changing the way they develop. So, like I said, the book is about what happened to what's known as Generation Z, or Gen Z for short. لو أنا بقول حاجة وحد مش فاهم, please stop me and we can go ahead and translate. Okay? So Generation Z, or Gen Z, is the generation that was born after 1995. After that is, this is the generation that follows the millennials. For them, puberty started around 2009. And that is important because we will see this is around the time that the smartphones and social media first came into play. The iPhone came in 2007, and then after that, a few years later, is when you start seeing Instagram, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So if we take a look, this slide shows the development of a lot of the technologies that we all use. Radios, computers, color TV, internet. And then if you notice on the right, social media and the smartphone, you see a very rapid increase. So all these other technologies, relatively speaking, a little slower in people to adapt them, but social media and smartphones very quickly ended up in a majority of people's hands. I'm sure a majority of us have Samsung Galaxy, have an iPhone. So if in 2011, 77% of teenagers had a phone. 23% had a smartphone. Okay? So what does that mean? That means that majority of the teenagers cannot access the internet 24/7. So compare that to just 5 years later, 80% of teenagers had a smartphone, okay? 28% of children between the ages of 8 and 12 had a smartphone, okay? So just to give you a sense of how prevalent this technology rapidly grew. So you hear this often, my child is glued to his or her phone, right? Or I'll speak to myself, I'm glued to my phone, okay? Because I'm sure this doesn't just affect children, it affects us, but so the focus in the heart will be on the children. So this is a quote that was pulled right out of the book. And I'm sure most of you have read it, and I won't read it. But so the point is, the smartphone and the social media is causing something that, for a lot of us, it makes us feel uneasy. And في حاجة مش طبيعية بتحصل, right, with our kids. Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint. What this book does is it breaks down what social media is doing to the children, okay? And so for the rest of the talk today, we're basically going to go through the book and touch the high points, الحاجات المهمة, and I encourage everyone who's interested to buy the book and read it for themselves. But everything for the rest of the talk will be from the book. يعني الgraphs are from the book, الfacts من الكتاب, everything I'm saying is from the book, okay? So the first thing the author discusses is that there is a big difference between how we interact in the real world compared to how we interact in the social world. And this is very important in the virtual world, in social media. And so there are 4 characteristics of interactions that we have in the real world that are different from the virtual world. So our interactions in the real world are embodied. So we use our bodies to communicate. Most of the time when I'm communicating with someone without a phone, I am in front of them, I am talking to them, I am looking at them. We are conscious of the other person's body. A lot of the communication is not words, right? It's body language. How the person in front of you is responding to what you're saying. Are they folding their hands? Or are they receptive? So it is embodied. It is synchronous. So it's happening at the same time. So if I want to tell Mano something, and I have to tell it to him right now, and he has to hear me right now, and he has to respond right now, right? Not tomorrow, sorry, right? So that's a big difference. It's one-to-one or one-to-several communication. Again, it's one-to-one or it's a group that is communicating. So all of these is very different than what's happening in the virtual world through social media. So first off, it's disembodied. I'm communicating with what? With a phone, right? With technology to get my message to someone else. In this day, you can communicate with AI, artificial intelligence. So you don't even need someone. I don't know if anyone has used any type of AI. It's very realistic, okay? It's asynchronous. So what does that mean? I post something on Instagram, but then I check it later to see if anyone commented or if anyone responded, any likes. It's very different than when you're having a conversation with someone in real time. He makes a very important point that video calls is actually excluded from this. So FaceTime and ways in video calls with WhatsApp, this actually does not count as communication in the virtual world. This is very important and we'll talk about that more next week of why that's important for when it comes to children. So this involves one-to-many communication. When people post things on the internet, are they posting it for one person? Usually not. It's being posted out to the world and to the public, and the reception is how people, many people, anyone can comment, can retweet it, as we say, they can post anything they want about it, okay? So it's very different than what is happening in real life. And sorry, and one thing I forgot to mention, for the real world, the communication, he says here it takes place within communities that have a high bar for entry and exit. يعني إيه؟ يعني when I'm communicating with my friends, these are people who we have an active relationship in a friendship. It is not just when I want to say something to someone, I think about what I'm going to say. And it's very dynamic. And I cherish those relationships. I care for them. Versus in what we consider relationships in social media, communities on social media, Instagram, Facebook, it's very easy to come in and out as you please. I'm not happy with this group. I'm not happy with this friend. What am I going to do? I'm going to block them. So I'm going to get out of the group. This has implications for our relationships and for how society and culture develops, okay? So as we discussed earlier, 79% of teenagers had a phone by 2016. Social media accounts for 2 hours a day for a majority of teens. This is not the internet. This is just social media. Okay, so that's different than what they're using the internet for homework, for school, for things that are not involving social media. Teens overall report spending 7 hours a day total on screens. Okay, so that's everything. That's social media, Netflix, YouTube, using the work for computer. Using the computer for work, for school. And this is social media has added to that. So that number, a good portion of that number is the effect of social media. A notable number of teenagers say that they feel that they are constantly on social media, okay? So a big number of the children who have these devices are using them often. And it's distracting them in schools as well. The book discusses that, and we'll get into it a little bit. Are we good so far with translation? Everyone is okay? Okay. Sorry, my Arabic is maybe 5%. So okay. So the author goes on to discuss something he calls the Great Rewiring. And it's basically a description of how the daily life, the consciousness, and the relationships of the children who went through puberty at the time of the introduction of social media in 2013 was very different than, say, for example, 13-year-olds who went through puberty in 2007. And so he goes on to discuss what actually occurred in the development and how it's affected children through puberty and after puberty. So why is a smartphone actually different? So like having a smartphone, why is it actually different? So there's a couple of very key things to be aware of that make a smartphone different than a regular phone. So in 2010, the iPhone 4 came out, okay? Why is the iPhone 4 important? It was the first phone that had a front-facing camera, okay? So the same year, the Galaxy S came out, also with a front-facing camera. Around the same time, you see an increase in the utilization of Instagram. So Facebook came out first. How many people have Facebook? So Facebook came out first, and then Instagram came out. Instagram was a big change for children, because with Instagram, there is now the ability, combined with the front-facing camera, to be able to post a significant portion of who you are and represent who you want to be to the world, okay? So that had a very profound impact on children, as we'll get into. Thank you. You want to do that now? You sure? For the recording.
And I don't think إن إحنا we will go into details. I will be very quick. هاي تقدروا تسمعوني؟ اوكي فيعني I'll be very quick. هو التوك عن كتاب اسمه The Anxious Generation. الترجمة الحرفية للكتاب ده معناه ايه؟ الجيل القلق. بس ده بيتكلم عن القلق اللي هو مش طبيعي، القلق اللي هو يعني ايه؟ اللي زيادة عن الطبيعي، مش القلق اللي احنا الجيل بتاعنا بيكسبيرينسه. الكتاب ده بيعمل أبحاث عن ليه الجيل اللي هو بتاع جين زي، الناس اللي هم اتولدوا بعد سنة 1995 بيتعرضوا لقلق غير طبيعي. وهو يعني الراجل اللي كاتب الكتاب ده عامل أبحاث كتيرة قوي، ومن الأبحاث بتاعته عرف يماب إن هو يثبت إن القلق ده جه مع السوشيال ميديا والسمارت فونز. في فرق كبير قوي ما بين الكوميونيكيشن، الكلام اللي احنا بنتكلمه هنا communities face to face، والكلام او الكوميونيكيشنز او الريليشن شيبس لما بتبقى عن طريق السمارت فونز او السوشيال ميديا. وهو في يعني 4 main differences، 4 اختلافات اساسيه. اول حاجه ان احنا لما نيجي نتكلم مع بعض هنا احنا بنتكلم فيس تو فيس، شايفين بعض، شايفين البادي لانجوج بتاعتنا ايه، وده بيدي مسج كبيره قوي. تاني حاجه ان احنا هنا سينك، انا بتكلم انتوا بتردوا عليا، انتوا بتردوا عليا انا كمان برد عليكم. الحاجه الثانيه ان احنا لما بنيجي نتكلم هنا احنا بنبلد او بنبني علاقات، العلاقات دي بتتطلب جهد كبير قوي ان احنا نبنيها، وبتتطلب جهد كبير قوي ان احنا ننهيها. فمش بيبقى من السهل ان احنا نبني علاقه، ومش بيبقى من السهل ان احنا نلغي علاقه. رابع حاجه ان احنا لما بنيجي نتكلم مع بعض هنا احنا بنتكلم 1 لواحد او 1 لعدد محدود، يعني مش بتكلم ل1 لمليون، صح؟ 1 لواحد او 1 لعدد محدود. الحاجات دي مختلفه تماما لما بنيجي نتكلم على السوشيال ميديا. لما بنيجي نتكلم على السوشيال ميديا، اول حاجه السوشيال ميديا احنا بنتكلم عن طريق الصور، عن طريق التكست، بس مش بنتكلم فيس تو فيس. الاكسكلوجن للحاجات اللي هي فيديو كولز، فانتوا لو عندكم فيديو كولز تعملوها مع ناس في مصر او قرايبكم في مصر او اصحابكم في مصر، ده مش معتبر او مش يعني ملهاش نفس التاثير السلبي للكوميونيكيشن بتاع السوشيال ميديا. تاني حاجه اختلاف ان احنا مش سينك، يعني احنا لما بنيجي نبوست حاجه على السوشيال ميديا بنبوستت وبنستنى اورز او ساعات كتيره قوي عشان نشوف الرياكشن بتاعها، اذا كان الرياكشنز ده بعدد اللايكس، عدد الشيرز، عدد الكومنتس، وده بيخلي ان في نوع من انواع الترقب، احنا مستنيين اللي هيحصل، وبيخلينا برضو لازقين في الديفايس بتاعنا او الجهاز بتاعنا مستنيين مين هيرد علينا، والناس بترد بتقول ايه، وكام واحد عجبه اللي احنا كاتبينه، وكام واحد قال لا الكلام ده مش صح. فده بيخلي نوع من انواع الترقب وانواع القلق، وبيخلينا برضو ان احنا نانجيج او ان احنا نبقى مركزين في اللحظه اللي احنا فيها اصعب واقل. تاني حاجه ان احنا تالت حاجه لما بنيجي نتكلم على السوشيال ميديا احنا بنتكلم 1 لمليون، احنا حقيقي ما عندناش كنترول على مين اللي هيبص على الكلام اللي احنا كاتبينه، اي حد ممكن يعمل شير لاي حاجه، والحاجات ساعات بتبقى يعني ايه بتتفاقم، يعني ممكن تكتب كومنت بسيط جدا، بوست بسيط جدا، والموضوع يخرج عن السيطره. رابع حاجه ان الكوميونيتيز اللي على السوشيال ميديا دي ما فيهاش اي نوع من انواع الارتباط، او ما فيهاش اي نوع من انواع الكوميتمنت اللي هو الالتزام، مفيش اي نوع من انواع الالتزام. انا ممكن ادخل الكوميونتي في اي وقت، ولو عايزه اطلعه في اي وقت برضو ممكن اطلعه في اي وقت، ودي برضو مشكله. ليه؟ لان بتخلي الناس مش بتراعي هي بتقول ايه، او مش بتراعي هي بترياكت ازاي. يعني سهل قوي ان احنا نرياكت بطريقه قليله الذوق قوي، او طريقه مش لطيفه خالص واحنا ورا السكرين، مش كده؟ كمان الكتاب بيتكلم عن حاجه مهمه قوي، ان نوع من سبب من اسباب القلق الزياده او القلق المفرط اللي هو بيتكلم عليه، اللي هو ابتدى مع الكاميرات اللي هي من قدام دي، اللي هي بتعرف تخلينا ناخد سيلفي بطريقه اسهل. وده لان بيخلي دلوقتي اسهل ان انت مش بس ان انت تشوف نفسك في مرايه، او ان انت تشوف نفسك ازاي الناس شايفاك، بس ان انت تبوست حاجه مهمه قوي عن نفسك بمنتهى السهوله. صح الكلام ده مظبوط؟ بس هو ده. Did I miss anything?
No, the only thing I would add is not just you can take a picture of yourself, but you can filter that picture, okay? And that filtering ability, which came with Instagram, had a very negative impact on children, especially girls, as we will discuss. For boys became more and more exposed to online video games, multiplayer games, and unfortunately pornography. And we will talk about all of this, okay? So social media affected girls more. Overall, the virtual world also had a negative impact on boys, which we'll get into, okay? It will make sense as we continue on. So he essentially, this quote I felt captured what he's discussing very well. He says, children born in the late 1990s were the first generation in history who went through puberty in the virtual world. It is though we sent Generation Z to grow up on Mars when we gave them smartphones in the early 2010s, and the largest uncontrolled experiment humanity has ever performed on its own children. So what the children went through when they were exposed to social media and smartphones, there is nothing like it. There was nothing like it as far as he could tell in the history of humanity and the development of humanity. And the impacts they've had on children is profound. So let's talk a little bit about those impacts. So the first thing we found that as more and more children got smartphones, got social media, the rates of depression started to go up. Okay, so that was the very first thing. It quite suddenly in the early 2010s is when things started to change. And it's not just in America. These are not just American trends. This was found in all Western civilizations, societies that had access to high-speed internet, that had smartphones, and had social media. We see specifically that it's not just depression, it's all of the, they're called internalizing disorders. It's a specific group of mental disorders that includes depression and anxiety. And why is this important? Because these are, we'll find that there's a direct link between using social media and these types of internalizing disorders, anxiety and depression. Specifically, we find that the rates of anxiety, it didn't go up across the board. It goes up fastest in those who are youngest, okay? Again, those who are starting puberty and went through puberty around the time that smartphones and social media was introduced, so Generation Z. As you see the ages, as you look at the trends in the different age groups, the older you are, the less likely you are affected by anxiety and depression, okay? For the sake of time, I won't go too much into this, but I think it's important to define what anxiety is. So anxiety is not fear of, and it's not fear, it's different than fear. Fear is a feeling of, something is about to actually happen and I am scared. For example, I see a lion, I am about to be attacked by a lion. That's fear. Anxiety is, I am constantly thinking that there is a lion somewhere and I might be attacked. But the actual thing that may affect me is not present. Is that a good way to explain it, Mary? Okay. So is that, yes? Yeah, so it's, you are worried. It's, yes, that's a good, yes. That's a good way. Yeah, like the stimulus that can cause the problem is not always there. A little anxiety is not a bad thing. But a lot of anxiety and chronic anxiety has a negative impact on development, okay? And so we find that it's not just about having a diagnosis. And it's not like, oh, now children are getting a diagnosis of anxiety or depression. It's actually, unfortunately, coming to fruition. Yani we're seeing increasing rates of self-harm. We've seen increasing rates of suicide as well around the same time. Now, I won't go into it in a lot of detail, but he does give an explanation in the book of why you can easily say, well, طبعا, there's a lot of problems in the world. Children are probably worried about مش عارف إيه. They're seeing the news around them, the wars and all this stuff. He gives specific explanations and reasons why you can't necessarily say it's due to these other things. And he makes a very strong argument that it's social media that is causing these things. Okay? Do you want to, this will probably be a good place to.
الحاجة التانية اللي هو الكتاب بيتكلم عليها إن هو الرايز اوف سوشيال ميديا والسمارت فونز غيرت الطريقة اللي الأطفال بيكسبيرينس بيها البلوغ. يعني احنا لما كنا يعني الجيل بتاعنا لما كنا بنبلغ كانت الطريقة اللي احنا بلغنا بيها والتجارب اللي احنا عدينا بيها خلال فترة البلوغ مختلفة تماما عن الطريقة اللي الجيل بتاع جين زي وأي حد اتولد بعد 95 بيكسبيرينس أو بيعدي من خلال البلوغ فيها. والتأثير السوشيال ميديا والسمارت فونز بقى مختلف عن البنات والولاد. البنات بقى عندهم يعني السوشيال ميديا والسمارت فونز خلتهم يبقى عندهم نظرة مش مظبوطة قوي عنهم هم، خلتهم ان هم يبقوا obsessed اكتر بازاي احنا او يعني مشغولين اكتر بازاي احنا بنقدم نفسنا للمجتمع، احنا بنصور نفسنا ازاي، بنلبس ايه، بنبوست ايه وبنعمل ايه. فده خلت فيه مشاكل كتيرة عن اللي احنا بنقوله سيلف ايمج، احنا شايفين نفسنا ايه كبنات. الولاد بقى المشاكل بتاعتهم مرتبطة أكتر بالفيديو جيمز، بيشوفوا إيه على الفيديو جيمز، بيتكلموا مع مين في الفيديو جيمز، العالم بتاع الفيديو جيمز اللي إحنا يعني ما نعرفش عنه حاجات كتير. حاجة تانية الكتاب اتكلم عنها الارتفاع في نسب الدبريشن الاكتئاب والقلق المفرط أو القلق الزيادة مع الجيل بتاع جين زي. الكتاب قدم يعني very strong يعني أدلة قوية جدا جدا إن الارتفاع في الاكتئاب ونسبة معدلات القلق ملهاش علاقة بالأحداث اللي بتحصل حوالينا، ملهاش علاقة بالحروب، ملهاش علاقة بالاقتصاد، ملهاش علاقة بالأخبار الوحشة اللي احنا بنقراها. الحاجات دي صح بتخلي الناس تقلق أكتر، بتخليهم عندهم اكتئاب أكتر، لكن هو الكتاب عرف يوصل بالظبط لأن معدلات الزيادة في معدلات الاكتئاب والزيادة في معدلات القلق الزيادة ده ملهوش يعني ليه علاقة بالأخبار، بس هو حقيقي يعني مرتبط أكتر أو مرتبط بصورة مباشرة باستخدام السوشيال ميديا والسمارت فونز، مش كده؟ كمان المشكلة مش بس في معدلات الاكتئاب ومش بس في معدلات القلق الزيادة، لكن برضو للأسف إن في نسبة كبيرة قوي وفي زيادة كبيرة قوي في معدلات إن الإنسان أو معدلات إن الشخص يأذي نفسه بصورة أو بصورة أخرى، يعني عن طريق محاولات الانتحار أو عن طريق إن هم بيأذوا نفسهم جسدياً. فحتى لو محاولات الأذية دي مش بتأدي الانتحار، لكن هي برضو ساعات يعني هي أذى نفسي يعني أو أذى جسدي قصدي. مش مظبوط الكلام ده؟ Right? Yes.
Thank you. So the next part, there are some things that are fundamental for childhood and for development, and social media and smartphones take these things away. Okay? So there are three things that are important for development, and they are taken away. free play, حاجة اسمها attunement, and we'll talk about all these, and social learning. And social learning is there's something called conformist biased and prestige biased. So, أول حاجة, what is free play? So free play is activity that children participate in that has no goal in itself. So what's the point of it? I'm doing it just because I want to. It's what kids do. They just play, right? They either it's with toys or they go outside in the playground and they play with their friends. That is called free play. It's important to have physical play. It's important that there's free play with different age groups, okay? So younger kids and older kids. That's the healthiest type of free play. Physical risk is also very important. So, مثلا free play out in a playground where a child may accidentally fall and get an injury. That's very important, okay? And we'll talk about why these things are important. Opportunities for children to get into conflicts and figure out how to deal with those conflicts, right? There's no grown-up who is saying these are the rules. Let the kids play and they figure it out on their own. This is important, okay? Children, the more time they're spending on their phones, less free play, okay? The way young people use social media is very much the opposite of free play. What is free play? The essence is I'm just doing this because it's fun and I am learning how to interact with others. On social media, what are children doing? They're essentially turning themselves into a brand, right? I'm going to post very specific pictures. I think about what I'm going to post. I may filter the picture to make it look a certain way, or I think people will respond to this in a certain way, and so that's what I'm going to post. It's very, very different than free play and what free play gives you. Again, free play is doing something just for its own sake. Attunement. Sorry, before we move on to attunement. So he found that the rates of children meeting up with their friends on a daily basis since the introduction of smartphones and technology has gone down, okay? So kids are not participating in free play the way they used to since the introduction of social media. So attunement is very important. This is important for kids and for us, for parents. So attunement is when two people or more than two people are connected in a way. So what is this? This is essentially any interaction two people have. There is an attunement. You are on the same wavelength, okay? So he gives a great example of when kids play patty cake. Darfin patty cake? Patty cake, yep. They're just two kids in front of each other. What are they doing? This is a perfect example of attunement. They are doing something, they're not trying to accomplish any goal. There is in all of us, there is this innate desire to want to connect to someone else on a deeper level. And for kids, that's one of the ways it manifests. With the introduction of smartphones, attunement levels go down, especially between parents and children, okay? So we are wired to connect, but 17% of American parents say that they are disrupted when they are talking with their children, okay? And a lot of it, they say, is due to smartphones. So think about it. The parent-child relationship is affected as well by social media, okay? That attunement starts to decrease. Attunement is very important because it helps children develop emotional self-regulation, so deal with their emotions, okay? So it is important for development. And it's important because it also helps children develop trust. amongst each other and between themselves and their parents, okay? I'll finish this slide and then we can translate. So the other thing that's important is social learning. So social learning is how children learn to be part of society and part of culture. And so he divides this idea of social learning into two categories. حاجة اسمها conformist bias and prestige bias. And I will explain what these are. So conformist bias is when we are trying to decide what is it that's going to make me a successful human being in this society. What do? I look around and see what other people are doing, okay? And so when children look around them and they see that all the other children have phones, okay, that has a very strong impact on subconsciously and consciously what they believe it takes to become a successful child, a successful person in this society. Not only that, but what are they seeing on the phones, right? So what are they seeing on social media? And they are internalizing those things to decide what it is that is going to make me successful. Okay, so sometimes it's good things, a lot of times it's bad things. The other thing is prestige bias. So prestige bias is this idea that I am going to sometimes consciously or unconsciously find someone who I idolize and say, well, this is a successful person. I want to be like that person. And so that's because they have prestige. And so I may try to mimic this person. I may try to do what they do. I may try to get closer to them, be their friend. So in social media, this unfortunately takes we see this when people post things and kids are liking and retweeting, okay? And so people can gain prestige and become popular on social media for things that may not necessarily actually be prestigious. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining that well. And so you may find some of the, like when you hear about social media influencers, the people who are famous just for being famous. And they posted something on YouTube or Instagram and they have thousands of followers. When our kids are exposed to this, it triggers this feeling like, look at all of this positive feedback this person has received. Well, what are they doing? Maybe if I do this, I will also have positive feedback. Maybe I will be successful. Taman, this is not all conscious. The kids are not saying this to themselves, but this affects the way they are taking in what they see on social media. Okay, do you want to summarize that?
الكتاب برضو بيقول ان في 3 حاجات مهمة جدا كل الأطفال محتاجينها في فترة البلوغ اللي هي اللعب الحر، التناغم والتعلم الاجتماعي. ال3 حاجات دي إلى حد كبير disrupted يعني مش عارف باظت أو يعني باظت صح؟ باظت بسبب السوشيال ميديا والسمارت فونز. أول حاجة اللعب الحر ده اللي هو اللعب بلا هدف، يعني احنا بنلعب علشان نتبسط، اللي هو احنا بنلعب بنروح البارك عشان نتفسح عشان نتبسط، مفيش أي هدف، احنا مش بنحاول نتعلم أي حاجة. الجزء الثاني من اللعب الحر المهم جدا ان احنا بنعمل اللي انا بقوله لعيالي، احنا بنعمل حركة صعبة، يعني بنعمل حاجة يعني بجسمنا حركة صعبة فيها مخاطرة، وده جزء من اللعب الحر، اني مش لازم تبقى كل حاجة معمولة بأمان أو مظبوطة أو يعني إيه محسوبة قوي، فيها نوع من أنواع المخاطرة، والمخاطرة ساعات بتبقى يعني المحدودة بتبقى مطلوبة. الحاجة التانية في اللعب الحر مهمة قوي، إزاي إحنا بنتعامل مع الاختلاف، يعني أنا بلعب وحد تاني بيلعب وإحنا الاتنين عايزين نستخدم المرجحة في نفس الوقت، إزاي إحنا هنتعامل مع الاختلاف ده، إزاي إحنا هنتفق، إزاي إحنا هنمانج أو يعني إزاي إحنا هنظبط الموضوع. انا عايزه العب على المرجحه وانت كمان عايزه تلعبي على المرجحه، احنا ازاي هنحل المشكله دي؟ ازاي هنتفاهم وهننجوشيت مع بعض؟ كل الحاجات دي طبعا بقت يعني disrupted او مش مظبوطه بسبب او العيال مش بي experience الحاجات دي او مش بيتعايشوا مع الحاجات دي بسبب السوشيال ميديا، ان هم كلهم ورا التليفونات بتاعتهم قدام السكرينز. التناغم ده اللي هو التفاهم مش بس مع الجيل بتاعنا، مش بس مع اصحابنا، بس برضو مع اهالينا في البيت. ازاي يبقى في تفاهم وفي طول الوقت العيال بيبقوا ورا تليفوناتهم مستنيين فيدباك، لو هو لايك ولا شير ولا كومنت. ازاي يبقى في نوع من انواع المحادثات الطويله العميقه لما هو طول الوقت في حاجه بتزن عليهم ان هم يبصوا على السكرين. كل الحاجات دي ما عادتش زي زمان. ثالث حاجه التعلم الاجتماعي. التعلم الاجتماعي ده ازاي الاطفال بيتعلموا ان هم يبقوا جزء من المجتمع. وده في حاجتين فيه. اول حاجه الانحياز الى الامتثال. الانحياز الى الامتثال ده اللي هو ايه؟ انا كل اصحابي عندهم تليفونات، انا كمان عايزه ابقى عندي تليفون زيهم علشان اقدر اقعد معاهم، علشان ابقى يعني ايه الكول كيدز. يعني انا عايزه ابقى ايه شكلي حلو قدام اصحابي، عايز ابقى زيهم، عايز افت ان، يعني عايزه ابقى من الشله يعني من الاخر. ده ازاي اللي هو ايه؟ ازاي انا ما بقاش مسفت اللي هو يعني انسان مش مرفوض بمعنى مرفوض، بس ازاي ابقى انسان باين عليا ان انا جزء من المجتمع ده. وده طبعا بيجي بحاجات وحشه وبيجي بحاجات برضو ايه كويسه. الحاجه الثانيه البرستيج بايس اللي هو الانحياز الى المكانه. الانحياز الى المكانه ده لما ندي مكان لناس ممكن ما يبقاش عندهم اي مؤهلات ان هم يقولوا لنا احنا نعيش حياتنا ازاي، زي الانفلونسرز اللي هم طول الوقت يقولوا مثلا اشتري ده، اعمل كذا، جرب البرودكت ده، امشي بالطريقه دي، اعمل التشالنج ده. العيال كتير يعني علشان الانفلونسرز دول بيبقى عندهم ناس كتيره قوي بتفولو ذم، ناس كتيره قوي بتكومنت عليهم، ناس كتيره قوي بتقول يا الناس دي مهمه، الناس دي ليها مكانه. فبيبقى في نوع من انواع انا كمان عايز افولو الانفلونسر ده هيخليني انسان كول، ده هيخلي الناس تبص لي بطريقه مختلفه. بيبقوا حاسين الانفلونسر ده بالرغم ان هو ما عندوش اي مؤهلات، ما عندوش اي حاجه تخليه يبقى ليه صوت مسموع، بس somehow الناس دي بيبقى ليها مكانه وتاثير كبير قوي في حياه الاطفال، ممكن يبقى ساعات اكتر من تاثير المدرسين بتوعهم واكتر من تاثير اهاليهم. صح؟ Did I miss anything?
So, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip past a few slides. So, to summarize, he essentially says that since the dawn of social media, it has added 2 to 3 hours of additional screen time to a child's life, okay? Which is already high to start with. We talked through some of this, and again, for the sake of time, I want to keep going. So there are 4 foundational harms. So we talked about what children need and what social media takes away. Now there are 4 ways that social media actually will harm the child, okay? أول حاجة is social deprivation. Okay, we talked about this a little bit, that children need social interactions between themselves, and social media takes that away. So this graph is the average time spent with friends, okay, daily. And so we see that it has started to decline drastically since the introduction of social media. For us as parents, again, 62% of children, so that's more than half, ages 6 to 12, say that their parents are distracted when they are talking to them because of their phones. Okay, so that's affecting us as well. It's ironic because it's called social media, but it's actually affecting our social interactions with each other. This I found was interesting. This is a quote by a college student who essentially says she walked into a classroom, she found 30 or more people in her classroom just sitting on her phone. Why did this resonate with me personally? And I see this in Sunday school. Okay, I walk into Sunday school, all the kids are down looking at their phones. Okay? They're not doing what? Interacting. Okay? So we see it, unfortunately. Tani haga, sleep deprivation. Okay? So teenagers need 8 hours. If you're not a teenager, you're a preteen or an adolescent, you need 9 hours. Okay? Since the introduction of smartphones and social media, children are getting less and less sleep. Okay? They found that if you restrict screen time no later than 9 p.m., kids are getting more sleep, they're sleeping sooner, and they have improved performance on tasks that require attention and focus. ثالث حاجة, attention fragmentation. So kids are struggling to stay focused. Smartphones, you're getting 192 alerts a day. Okay? So that's 11 notifications an hour. That's one notification every 5 minutes. Okay? So that's طبعا someone who has all their notifications on. But the numbers are high. Okay? And again, I won't read these quotes, but to summarize, children's brains are still developing. إحنا, when I get a notification, I may feel, oh, I should check it, but I'll say, لا, I'm giving a talk. صح? An adolescent, their brain, that part of the brain has not developed. They get a notification, they're going to check it. Okay? So imagine a child who's trying to do their homework. They get a notification, they pull out their phone, they go on Instagram, and then they see what the notification was. Then they start scrolling. طبعا انتوا عارفين ال endless scroll, صح? Going and going and going and going and going. Imagine what that can do to a child who their brain has not developed enough where they can stop and say no. Okay? رابع حاجة is addiction. So they are finding that children are potentially actually becoming addicted to phones. And the reason why is because there is a specific way that phones are developed to lead to addiction. And when I say phones, I'm now talking about phones with social media. So في حاجة اسمها the hook model. Okay, this was developed by the software engineers who came up with Facebook and who came up with Instagram. So how does it work? في external trigger, a notification, my phone beeps, okay? And now I take an action. What do? I touch the notification. But so what happens? I get a variable reward. Yani not every time I open up the notification, it's something that's beneficial. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. That variable reward piece, they have found, is the strongest development that gets people hooked to social media and all of these other applications. When you don't know what you're going to get, you don't know if you're going to get someone who liked your post, you don't know if you're going to get a comment, that anticipation, maybe I'll get something, that's what gets kids hooked. And then the cycle repeats itself. And the goal is no longer do the children need an external trigger. No longer do they need the beep or the vibration. They eventually get to the point where the trigger is internal. And once the trigger is internal, the kids are hooked. So it's no longer I get the vibration. It's I'm trying to do my homework and this is too hard. Let me quickly go on Instagram and see if there's anything to distract me. طبعا مش بيقولوا كده صح؟ بس that's what's happening. Okay? So the software is developed for this purpose. Okay? The goal in mind is to have children do this. I wanted to share an email I got. So I'll say I don't have social media. Okay? But I got on Facebook for a few weeks because I needed to sell something on Facebook Marketplace. Okay? So I don't check the Facebook. And then I get this email. Danny Gerges commented on his post that you haven't seen. Okay? I don't talk to Danny Gerges. This is a friend of mine from 20 years ago. So what's it doing? I don't go online. It doesn't register. I look at Facebook. it sends me an email to try to get me to look. There's a comment. You haven't seen it yet. Go online, check. So this stuff it's purposely done to get us to use the product more and more. So we have 3 minutes. Probably good to end here. Yeah, and then we can continue at the next week. Yeah. Tab, do you want to translate and then we see if there's any questions?
الكتاب بيتكلم عن 4 حاجات 4 أضرار للسوشيال ميديا والسمارت فونز. أول واحد اللي هو الحرمان الاجتماعي. الحرمان الاجتماعي ده إن دلوقتي معظم العلاقات الاجتماعية للجيل بتاع الجين زي ده بقى عن طريق السوشيال ميديا، فما فيش العلاقات الاجتماعية اللي احنا عندنا اللي هو احنا نقعد نكلم بعض، إن احنا يعني زي ما اتكلمنا عن طريقة الكوميونيكيشنز قبل كده. تاني حرمان، فبيخلي الناس مش عارفه تتعامل مع بعض، يعني حتى الاطفال مش عارفين يتعاملوا مع اهاليهم علشان مفيش يعني السوشيال سكيلز، العلاقات المهارات الاجتماعيه ما عادتش موجوده اللي تخلي الاطفال يقدروا او الجيل ده يقدر يبقى عنده محادثات او يتعامل مع الناس مختلفه. تاني نوع من انواع الحرمان في النوم. الاطفال او الجيل ده مش بيعرف ينام كويس، عدد ساعات نومهم اقل، ولقوا ان انت لما بتقلل الوقت اللي هم يقدروا يقعدوه على السوشيال ميديا او السمارت فونز بيخلي النوم بتاعهم احسن. ثالث حاجه الاتنشن سبام. دلوقتي الجيل ده للاسف ما عندوش المقدره ان هو يقعد فتره طويله ويركز في حاجه. التركيز بتاعهم ضعيف جدا وبيبقى على فترات صغيره. يعني مثلا كان زمان يقولوا لنا ان الاتنشن سبان ما يقدرش، يعني الطالب ما يقدرش يقعد اكتر من 40 دقيقه. انا متهيألي لو عملوا دلوقتي ريسيرش او حاجه يشوفوا الطلاب يقدروا يقعدوا قد ايه مركزين، هيلاقوا ان هي مثلا لو 5 دقائق ده هيبقى انجاز. رابع حاجه ان للاسف السوشيال ميديا والسمارت فونز بقت عامله زي الادمان، ان دي حاجه بتدينا دوبامين، حاجه احنا محتاجينها او الجيل ده محتاجها علشان ايه يكيب جوينج، ان هم يحسوا ان هم في حاجه يعني بتجيلهم سعاده صغيره او سعاده مؤقته. وبرده الكتاب هيتكلم عن اللي هو كان الموديل ده مهم جدا. ليه بقى؟ لان هو ده بيورينا ازاي البلاتفورمز دي مصممه ان هم يخلوا الناس تقعد عليها فتره طويله جدا. بتبتدي بايه؟ بتبتدي بتريجر. التريجر ده الحاجه اللي بتخلينا نبص اصلا على السمارت فون او السوشيال ميديا. ده اللي هو البيب اللي بتجيلنا، اللي هو الرنه او الفايبريشن اللي بتخلينا نفتح ونشوف هو ايه اللي حصل ومحتاجين نشوفه واحنا لسه ما شفناهوش. لما بنفتح اللي هو ده الاكشن بنوصل لحاجه اسمها variable reward. variable reward ده اللي هو الايه؟ الترقب. احنا مش عارفين ايه اللي حصل، عايزين نشوف هل دي حاجه كويسه حصلت ولا دي حاجه مش كويسه. احنا بنبقى مش عارفين بالظبط ايه اللي حصل، ليه احنا جات لنا الفايبريشن دي، بس عارفين ان في حاجه حصلت واحنا عايزين نشوفها. بعدين بقى الفاريبل ريورد دي ايه بقى؟ ريجاردلس بقى هي حاجه كويسه حاجه وحشه، بتخلينا نعمل ايه؟ بتخلينا عايزين نرجع تاني ان احنا نبص لما يبقى في تريجر، نرجع تاني نبص على السوشيال ميديا دي لما ايه؟ لما الموبايل يرن تاني او يحصل فايبريشن تاني. بس بقى eventually هيحصل ايه؟ eventually احنا مش هنستنى ان احنا يجيلنا التريجر ده. eventually اللي بيحصل ايه؟ ان الطفل ما بيبقاش مستني ان هو يجيله رنه، ما بيبقاش مستني ان هو يعرف ان في حاجه حصلت. بيبقى السوشيال ميديا دي عامله زي ايه؟ عامله زي وسيله هروب لاي حاجه هم مش عايزين يعملوها. احنا عندنا هوم ورك محتاجين نعمله، بدل ما نركز في الهوم ورك نشوف اللي احنا مش عارفين نعمله، احنا نفتح السوشيال ميديا ونقعد عليها شويه. فبقى ايه؟ بقى التريجر ده ما بقاش اكسترنال اني مور، مش حاجه بتحصل بره اللي بتخلينا نفتح، بقى حاجه انترنال. انا عايز افتح واشوف ايه اللي حصل حتى لو انا عارف ومتاكد مفيش اي حاجه حصلت لاني ما جاتنيش نوتيفيكيشن. مظبوط؟ بس هو ده.
So Anna, a couple things. For the rest of this talk, I was going to focus on what actually happens to girls compared to what happens to boys. And then next week, we'll start with that. That'll be just a short part. And then the rest of the talk next week is going to be focused on the spiritual aspect. Okay, so what's actually happening rohiyan. But I know a lot of what we talked about today can maybe stir some uncomfortable feelings, maybe anxiety as parents or stress, the answer is not to take away the phones. Okay? I don't want anyone to walk away from today saying the social media and the phone is the worst thing. I need to go and throw it away, okay, for yourself or for your children. It's not about getting rid of it. It's about using it smartly and knowing the appropriate place in our life as parents and as Christians, okay? Next week's talk will be focused on that, okay? But again, I don't want anyone to feel like the message of today is we have to get off social media and take away the phones, okay? I don't know if we want questions or please. But
انا قلت لهم ما بعرفش اترجم بس الجمله دي عجباني قوي فهعرف اترجمها. بيقول لكم يعني لو احتمال من التوبيك بتاعت النهارده ان يكون عندكم انتوا شويه قلق دلوقتي على اطفالنا وكده والسوشيال ميديا والتليفونات، فبيقول لكم الحل مش ان انت تروح تاخد التليفون ترميه في الزباله او تاخدوهم منهم، يعني مش ده الحل. فانا بس باكد على كده.
Does anyone have any pressing questions? And I want to respect your time. I'll promise next week we'll have time for questions. Yeah. Yeah.
For work too. Now we use the cell phone. It's very important at work. I mean, you cannot even access your work unless you have cell phone. That's what I'm trying to just. Dr. Mark, it's kind of puzzle. It's very
Yeah.
hard to solve.
Bus, I think the message is not that phones are evil or phones are bad. And the message is not social media is evil and social media is bad. The message is we have to understand what social media, what children are going through when they are being exposed to social media. Because the whole point of the book is when a child is on Instagram, it is not like you on Instagram. It's very, very different. And I think there's a difference between my child has a phone to communicate versus my child has an Instagram account. يعني احنا in this country, the kids are here. But in this country, there's an age limit for some of the things I can buy in the store. انتوا عارفين أنا بتكلم على إيه. To open up an Instagram account, you have to be 13. And there's no way to verify that you're 13. And imagine what they can see at the age of whatever age you decide that they can have a social media account. So that's the whole point. يعني إحنا, we just have to be wise and we have to know what they're being exposed to and how their brain is still developing. Again, the message is not social media is bad. Absolutely not. I'm sure many of us connect with family in Egypt through social media. On WhatsApp, you can make a phone call and see someone in Egypt 10, 15 years ago. Impossible. So it's not bad. Nothing of itself is bad. Yes, correct.
حاجة بسيطة باسم الاجتماع. Thank you so much. يعني أول مرة يجي لنا مارك عايزين نشكره. يعني مش عايزينها تبقى أول مرة وآخر مرة، عايزينها تاني. الأول نقول أعياد الميلاد. كل سنة طيبين، عيد ميلاد شهر مارس. نورين الشرقاوي. معلش هي أكياس مقصرة معانا. كاترين أسعد، فين كاترين؟ كاترين تحت، هي نزلت تقريبا تجيب الحاجة. حنان ميخائيل. حنان ميخائيل موجودة؟ ما جاتش؟ أوكي. أنا متلخبطة. يس. دي مين؟ مجدي إبراهيم. يوستينا مسعد. يوستينا هاي بيرثداي. في كمان أول مرة تجيلنا مارينا مشيت. مارينا رزق الله مشيت. أول مرة تيجي. مشيت؟ طيب خلاص خلينا صح. صح يس معاك يس.
Okay, Mark, pick it and then just read like the last four.
Okay, so the raffle ticket winner is. Oh, three. Okay, first one, the last four digits. 5862. Again, that's 5862.
Yeah? Great. Okay, because sometimes they don't show. Yeah.
5887. One more. 5870.
لا انا لا بليز ما ينفعش. اجعلنا مستحقين نقول لك بالشكر يا ابانا الذي في السماوات، تقدس اسمك، ياتي ملكوتك، تكن مشيئتك كما في السماء كذلك على الارض. خبزنا كفنا اعطينا اليوم، واغفر لنا ذنوبنا كما نغفر نحن ايضا المذنبين الينا، ولا تدخلنا في تجربه لكن نجينا من الشرير. بالمسيح يسوع ربنا ان لك الملك والمجد الابد امين.